G'day, people. How are we all? So I got a little girl who's just going outside now. I'll just fix this up. No, we're good. You close the door, Astrid. Thank you. Mum finally got home just in time to sort things out. Rightio, we are ready to rock just in time. Actually, maybe not. It's all right. Don't worry about it, Astrid. Oh, here.
No, still drawing.
Wait. All right. It's a disaster to start. What can I say? But these are the way things roll on live television. So we're here to obviously discuss the anti-Semitism bill today. And we have Reuben Richardson with us to discuss this. G'day, mate. How are you?
Mark, good to see you.
Likewise, my friend. Thanks for coming on and sharing a piece of your mind here with us. So obviously you've been down to Parliament and you've created a submission regarding the public hearing on the inquiry to fight anti-Semitism and whatnot. And obviously what brought this to my attention when looking through Facebook, I noticed you'd posted this. So obviously it started here with, this fella saying this is unacceptable, and the Labor Cairns fella, Michael Healy, has been caught out again making disgusting comments on social media, this time anti-Semitic posts. To be a little bit more precise, he's actually said here, with the criminal element now running Israel and the murderous actions being directed by its government and carried out by the disgraceful Israeli murder squads, grossly and inaccurately named the Israeli Defense Force, I am proud that our relationship is not good. We should cease all diplomatic engagements as we did with Germany during World War II. So that's pretty inflammatory sort of stuff coming from the good old Labor Party as usual, What are your thoughts on that comment, my friend?
Look, I do not agree with the comment itself, but the way that it has been weaponized against them by the Liberal Party, throwing around terms like anti-Semitic for disagreeing with the actions of another country, is that the precedence you want to set? And is this bill going to end up basically criminalizing dissenting views or dissenting opinions on foreign powers and what they're doing? You may not agree with exactly with what he said, but should he have the right to be able to say it without being thrown in jail for 1 to 2 years, which is where these laws seem to be heading. There was an amendment at the 11th hour that has tightened things up a little bit. We'll see. We'll see in practice how this actually plays out.
So they've passed this bill. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the bill has been passed. There is a slight amendment. So previously, the bill allowed for a couple of bureaucrats to basically add additional phrases, add additional things to expand the bill over time without having to go through the full parliamentary system. These changes tighten that up, and now they've got a list.
Right. So that sounds dangerous to me, having an open-ended bill where they can just come in and do as they please whenever it suits them.
Governments change.
Yeah.
The thing that you're using to oppress people can be used to oppress you as soon as you're not in power. So, reducing freedoms of Australians should be the last thing we're trying to do. And there just seems to be, with the way the Queensland system is set up, with only a lower house, since the upper house was removed back in the day by the Suicide Six, I believe is what the terminology is. We have had a lower house that basically whoever's got the majority just determines what they do. So it could have gone through exactly how it was. At the 11th hour, they tightened it up a little bit, but they had no real reason to. They didn't have to. They could have punched it through as hard as they wanted.
Very disturbing stuff. Very disturbing. So you, in your submission here that you've or available also.
So this was my speech that I gave at the inquiry in Townsville at the Mercure. So they gave
Rightio.
me 3 minutes. So it's not quite my full speech, but it was, what I was able to fit in the very limited time limit that they provided.
Rightio. And you've highlighted this particular section here, and I think the first line really sums it up quite well in this highlighted section. The bill aims to fight anti-Semitism. So again, we're going to war for this. Why is the word fight so necessarily in this particular thing, but does not define it, and that again in itself is dangerous, because it's an open-ended statement there now, where we don't know what anti-Semitism actually means. How can you have a bill aimed around fighting anti-Semitism and not define what anti-Semitism is?
Yeah, and it has been a term that has been expanded as required, depending on who you're trying to go after. Historically, there was a lady in I'm not sure exactly, it wasn't Congress, but she was part of the Trump team, and there was an inquiry going on about anti-Semitism. We're talking maybe 3 to 4 months back, and she was a Catholic, and she was basically trying to draw from the people that they were interviewing, is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? And there was a lot of beating around the bush, but eventually she ended up getting chastised over it and lost her position because of what what that definition is to different people, and the control that seems to be over the American government, especially even this war running into Iran.
Yeah, which is again ridiculous. Are we allowed to talk about that, or are we going to get in trouble for being anti-Semitic? I mean, personally, I don't agree with this war. I don't think we should have anything to do with this bloody war.
No,
it's got nothing to do with us. Israel's
the calls are already coming. The calls are already coming. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
There was a lady. Yep.
It's. I mean, especially here in Townsville, I think it's something we really should be just talking about, because it's our soldiers, our fellow Townsvillians, that'll be sent out there to die in the name of what exactly? What is this all about? Are we going to find another scenario here in the Middle East where there was no bloody nuclear weapons, and those weapons of mass destruction storyline gets spilled out again and displayed for the bullshit it was last time? And it'll probably, I can only imagine it'll be the same bullshit again this time. They clearly wanted to bomb the shit out of them, so that's what they're doing.
And Iran is quite clearly who started to throw the first stones, and it was Israel, closely followed by America, and now Iran's trying to defend themselves. And taking out the equivalent of like the Pope for a particular sect, when you've got a global religion in a lot of Western countries. It is a spark that could result in further, further fighting on our shores, as it escalates.
Yeah, exactly. And, we've already seen our little Bondi terror attack scenario play out. Some people seem to think that, it may have been staged and set up. We don't really know what exactly happened there.
We don't know 100%, but there's definitely a lot of questions that need to be asked about that. The fact that our government, they were on watch lists. There's some interview footage going around of people actually implying that they were actually under close watch, and this seemed to have been allowed to happen for a lot longer than it should have. And this has been used to then put through these laws and change the whole, the whole narrative against the Australian people. And it's Australian people that'll be losing their freedoms in this. And they're not addressing, which is what I tried to address in my speech, like the root cause. Why is all this happening on our shores? Why is this happening in the West? It is because we have allowed these competing nations, competing civilizations onto our shores, that are then going to have there is going to be clashing that's occurring, inherent clashing that's going to be occurring. In 1970, I don't think this was really a thing in 1970, 1980. And we have just opened the borders without taking that into consideration, the civilizational impacts that have happened to many countries around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a big problem. You know, we need to be addressing who we're bringing in. You know, we need to identify, obviously, who we're bringing in and what kind of people. And you know, like it they're clearly not leaving their baggage at the door. That's for sure. You know, if you come to Australia, you got to wonder why are they here? You know, if you come here to live in the Australian way, or if you come here to assimilate in some way, or you know, or if you come here to, you know, attempt to assimilate us. You know, what's the motivation here?
Yeah, without assimilation, and actually, yep, I'm going to leave my baggage at the door. I want to become Australian. It is not going to end well, and especially when you end up with, you know, entire areas and suburbs that are basically becoming ethnic enclaves. The long-term implications of that, you're going to have large proportions of the population that are basically living in like parallel societies, and with those parallel societies, you will end up with further tensions, and the tensions are not reducing; they're increasing. One of the biggest numbers I think is quite key to think about is fourth generation links in a country.
Yeah.
In 1901, we had 20% of the population, so at Federation, 20% of the population had fourth generation links to our country. By 1980, so we've had a population explosion over those years. At 1980, we were at 45% had fourth generation links. So you had an increasing solidification of the Australian people and who they are, and a knowledge of, like a direct knowledge is like, yep, my grandparents fought in the Anzac, you know, in the wars, World War I, World War II, direct links to like the growth of that country. We are now, from 1980 to now, we have plummeted down to 25%. So our solidification as a people is dropping, and those ties are dropping. So those ethnic tensions, those civilizational tensions are just going to increase, and we're not coming together as an Australian people.
That's just definitely the way I'm seeing it, you know, and particularly with people of such devotion to religions, and it's both the Israeli and the Jewish and the Islamic people. You know, they're very stubborn in their ways. They both seem to think that their way is the best way, and they don't get along with each other very well. And we're somehow expected to sit in the middle of this and deal with it. Like, why?
Well, not just sit in the middle. They would like us to be fighting on their side.
Well, that's it. They want us to pick
like our soldiers to be and that to me is completely ridiculous. America shouldn't have even been involved or dragged into the war. But you know, the implications of the whole Epstein scandal and how much blackmail is going around that place. There hasn't been anyone who has really seen, you know, the law about what is actually going on there with all the, you know, potential pedophilia and children and nasty stuff that's come out in the Epstein files.
Yeah, and that seems to have a very heavy tie to Israel too.
Yeah.
So you got to, you know, I don't agree with either of these sides. I don't want to deal with either of them because I don't like what they're about.
We should be putting Australia first. We should be looking out for our country and our people, and ensuring our country is, you know, doing the best it can for us. And we've got this massive risk around sovereignty and like around sovereign energy. We're at the mercy of this war from a fuel point of view, and the implications about that. We do not have much of a stockpile of fuel, and it's been an embarrassment. Yeah, it's
it's shocking embarrassment. Japan were jumping up and down because they got like 200 plus days of fuel, and they're worried about that. I think we should be in a state of
we are a sitting duck.
Yeah,
we are a sitting duck down here, and you know, our government's you know, wanting to prioritize renewables that are not 24/7. If you do not have energy security 24/7, you have a problem. And you need baseload, you need strong baseload. We should have coal. I'm not against having some nuclear. We should actually be trying to have that technology here in Australia, building up our base of technology locally in our country to ensure that we've got plenty of uranium and we're just sending it out to other countries. And
we're
we should
taking
be
back nuclear waste.
yeah.
So we get all the problems associated and none of the benefits.
None of the benefits. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So that's some of the big issues that I see, and the obsession around renewables and solar and wind, predominantly coming from China, which is historically been not an ally, not within our ally circles, and then putting our trust and our reliance on that foreign power forevermore is a crazy idea. Like these things need to be replaced every 15, 20 years. You have like an event that takes out a good chunk of it, the damage associated with it just doesn't make sense from a real, like if you're trying to build a country, you need to have cheap, reliable, globally competitive energy, and that should be the focus.
And I'm just trying to find it because now we're into the energy scenario. I did see that there is a massive solar array. Actually, I think it's a video. I think I might have it as a video. Let's see if I can find it. But a massive solar array over in America. It hasn't even lasted 14 years. They've pumped thousands and thousands, millions of dollars into this frigging thing, and they've had to decommission it. It's just another example of wasted money on failing technology.
Yeah, and look, solar has its place, but you cannot, if you overcook it, it doesn't really help you, because one example, some solar farms that I've visited, they'll be off at 9 o'clock in the morning because the metrics don't make sense to actually have it on. You'll be paying money. So if that's happening, then they don't have enough place to store the energy. So if you don't have enough battery storage, some sort of energy storage for these technologies to balance everything out so that it can actually run 24/7, just doesn't work.
It certainly doesn't. I can't seem to find where it is now.
Have you, in terms of immigration, you've been following Rupert Lowe? And
no. I haven't.
That would be the most fascinating political uprising that seems to be occurring in Britain. And one of the quotes that I made in the speech, if you look over to Britain, Britain seems to be, I don't know, 10, 20 years down the path from where we are at the moment as a nation, in terms of just the ethnic tensions that are occurring, the hate speech laws that they've had to try and force down the throats of the British people to try and suppress any dissent. You will like each other, and that just doesn't work from a social cohesion point of view. Like you need to be built on something more than that. And that immune response that's occurred in Britain has led to this rise of this figure, Rupert Lowe. And in launching Restore Britain, one of the interesting comments that I had, it's in the speech, the time for half measures on immigration is so far gone, it's over, It's done. That may have worked in 2010, it's 2026, and the barbarians are already in the gates. And we will be unapologetic in our push for mass deportation. So they are getting serious and in reversing what has occurred. And really, like, their focus from the start will be on criminals. If you're a criminal and you're not a citizen, you're out. If you are on the taxpayer dime and you are not pulling your weight and you're not a citizen, you're out. Like, they are not going to be allowing freeloaders to just be taking advantage of the system anymore. And if they get in, it's definitely caused a bit of a stir in their country, and there's been a very sharp rise in support for them.
Yeah, and we're seeing the same thing with the likes of One Nation at the moment. The faith in the major parties who have allowed this to happen. They've brought this war to us, by reckless policy and insane immigration. And I mean, and talking about the UK, like here's an example of what's happened with their hate speech laws, and are we looking at the same thing here? Now, I mean, the number of arrests for speaking your mind in UK, 2,341 to USSR, under the
embarrassing.
communist regime in
Yeah.
1962 to 85. And you've also got to consider at this particular time that there's 4 times the population in USSR as there was in UK. So you could probably, quadruple that number to give it a relative perspective to population size. That's very bad, and that's, again, this is the level they're going to protect a failing idea, rather than hang on, we were wrong, we've stuffed up, we better fix this up. No, we'll just punish the people more for our friggin' stupidity.
They'll punish you for noticing. And on Australia Day, there was a young gentleman about 30, made a speech down in Sydney. They've got quite strong anti-Semitism, hate speech laws down there. We'll see how these laws play out in Queensland, and I believe he's facing 1 to 2 years jail now for speaking his mind, his opinion. You could argue that it wasn't the nicest, wasn't a nice thing that he said, but there's a lot of history there, and he young father with some kids, Australian, and he is being persecuted by the New South Wales government for his opinion. I don't think that's a great precedence for us as supposedly free Australians. Why have we moved to the point where we are oppressing people for their views, for speaking their mind? Like, how about you have a discussion about, okay, what's the reason behind this, and actually fight speech with speech is the old adage, I think.
I mean, again, the point I made when we were discussing this in the first place, was, well, aren't we all equal under the law? Why do we need something specific? Anti-Semitism, to me, that in itself is racist, because you've separated a certain section of the community, and whether you're doing it for positive or negative reasons, you've treated them differently, and that is racism. Which
is like the yes/no vote for that occurred back in, what was it, last year or 2 years ago, when they spent $400 million to try and create separate Australians. Like, it does not help. We should all be equal under the law, and ensuring that our heritage is protected as a country, because that is what holds us together as a country.
Exactly. And whenever you're treating one person differently to the other, there's going to be resentment from someone, and they're creating, again, another problem in an attempt to fix a problem, that they created. It's just nuts. It's like a dinghy full of freaking holes covered in Band-Aids, like, it's just nuts. This makes
I'll give you one example. During the inquiry, I got to listen to all the other speakers, and there was a lady, I'd estimate in her 50s or 60s, was from one of the nearby islands, and she spoke about a fundraiser that had been started to look to, in the hope of helping the children in Gaza. Okay. A very noble ideal. Surely we can agree that looking after children's a good thing. And her argument was that, oh no, the money's going straight to Hamas. Well, it isn't going. Like, they're trying to do something to, like, help people. Like, for you to then just try and put them in a box and say that that's the wrong thing to do. And the action she took was to go on the Facebook group or the event page and let them know that was the wrong thing to do. You shouldn't be doing. And then she was shocked when they responded in a not nice manner. And to me, that's just a very colorblind. You're just not seeing it from the other people's side. And I believe she even took it further, took it to the police, tried to go to the place where the fundraiser was occurring to try and shut it down. And that is not a way to actually, temper things. You are just encouraging this kind of anger that's occurring, and then surprised that they're being anti-Semitic. And so these new laws, I'm not sure exactly how they're going to end up playing out in principle, and because one of the original concerns was it was like a reverse onus of proof. You had to prove, someone would go and accuse you of anti-Semitism or something along those lines, or this hate speech occurring, and you had to prove your innocence, not the other way around. And that shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't be treating people differently like that.
No, especially if are we innocent till proven guilty or guilty till proven innocent? And there's enough questions in our law as it is, especially when it comes to things like speeding fines, where you're guilty until proven innocent. Hang on, what's our system of law exactly? Let's figure that. Can we get some basics clarified, please, before we proceed any further? I don't think we're asking too much for a little bit of logic here, but regarding your experience there, giving a submission, what were the other people's sort of reactions in that venue too? Like, A, to what you said, and B, what kind of other public submissions were available here in Townsville?
So there was a legal, like a lawyer from, I can't remember the exact organisation that he was in, and he raised a lot of concerns regarding how the law could change over time, how it's going to potentially impact additional Australians. There's going to be a lot of how it plays out over time, taking away freedoms for Australians, that kind of thing. There was a fair bit of, there was a number of submissions from the Jewish community and people like that lady who had her feelings heard about, anti-Semitism and the anti-Semitism that was building in the community. The definition, if you are you really need to define what it is for you to actually be able to determine whether or not it was anti-Semitic in the first place. Not being happy with the actions of Israel in Gaza, or and the ongoing since really 1948, and now Iran. Difference of opinion, totally other countries. Really, we should be focusing on Australia and how best to ensure our country is building a country for our children and our grandchildren.
Exactly. We've got enough problems here, and the idea of our tax dollars going over to fund war in any way, shape or form is not really what I want to see happen. I want that money to go into building the infrastructure we need, to building houses, to mitigate the housing crisis. We've got some real problems here. We don't need to go start wars with other countries at the same time and disadvantage ourselves, because we know the only people who are winning, here are the weapons dealers and the banks who are funding it all.
And look, two of the most exciting changes or things to come out of the Senate, like the Australian Senate, is Senator Ralph Babet pushing for for freedom of speech to end up becoming enshrined in the Constitution, to at least let the people make a decision on that. So
it's a great idea.
That would potentially just overrule all this stuff, this rubbish that's happening at the state level, and let's lock in what freedoms the people of Australia want. I'd go even further than not just freedom of speech. I think there needs to be a discussion Australia-wide about what freedoms do we want to say, no, we are not allowing any state governments or any federal governments to be encroaching on. And I think that should be probably, I'd take it that one step further. And then the second thing was regarding the Epstein files. There was another push that they've made, was to release everything regarding the Epstein files for Australia. As in, to find out what's actually really going on. Is there anything that's being hidden from the people about who's actually involved or implicated in that in Australia? And I think that's a really good move to find out what's going on. And so interesting times.
And we've also got the push in America for the release of UFO information, which I'm excited about. I'll probably no doubt end up being disappointed, because, you know, whenever the government says they're going to do something and you're supposed to get happy about it, it usually leads to disappointment, you know. But we'll see what happens, you know. On one side, well, they've confirmed the existence of these things. The American government has openly stated that they do have these. They have alien
Something.
tech. They have
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
They have exist. Yep, these things actually do exist, you know.
yeah,
And of course, you know, on a bigger level, I don't think it's just aliens. I think we're talking about a lot of different things that have been kept from us, you know, regarding the true history of the planet, for instance, and you know, life forms of multiple different points of view, from other densities and other dimensions, as well as, you know, things from other planets, and perhaps things that are already here and have been here for a lot longer than us.
Oh, look, I think the some of those new findings around in Egypt around the pyramids and some of the structure that seems to be below there that they're picking up with some of the GPR analysis. I haven't had a good chance to go in detail, but it's definitely interesting and worth looking into at some point.
Oh, for sure. So, yeah, it's exciting times there. But again, you know, what kind of a world are we, you know, advertising to the universe here when we see the stupidity of what's happening, you know, with the state of wars, and you're not allowed to criticize the wars now, you know, like that's just bullshit. You know,
Look,
you know,
I'd say
that's
stupidity
our
as well. It's just evil. Like there just
yeah.
seems to be this evil that is bubbling under the surface that no one actually wants to address.
Yes.
That is in a position of power, and the question is why. Like why is that occurring?
Yeah, and who's really pulling the strings? You know, I mean, there's a lot of theories that get around. You know, the Committee of 300 and things like that. You know, sitting there, all these ridiculously rich people pulling strings from behind the scenes. You know, which makes perfect sense when you see the way the government doesn't really seem to serve us. So who are they serving? You know, and to me, I see a desperate scramble to maintain an old and dying power structure on this planet. You know, and obviously to start throwing bombs and, you know, start more wars is a wonderful political move for people who are trying to hide other things and keep you distracted from what's going on, you know. But yeah, like looking at this on a galactic level, and that's something I think people are going to have to start really thinking about too. It's, you know, we are not alone in the universe. We know that now. The American government has confirmed it for us. You know, what kind of presentation is, you know, planet Earth and the people and the humans with on it to the rest of the galaxy? I mean, you know, these entities have been around for so long, for instance, you know, but they haven't bombed the shit out of us. I don't think there's any threat there, you know, that we keep hearing national security thrown around. But at the end of the day, you know, they've probably got more to fear from a bunch of lunatics, evil lunatics on this planet who are more hell bent on blowing each other up than anything. It's I find the whole situation is extremely selfish. You know, like the way, you know, especially if we've got advanced technology that's been kept away from us, people who, you know, could have benefited, you know, medically from a massive advance in technology that we could have probably do have too. Those things are going to come out as well. So, you know, I don't know. Do you watch Redacted much?
Not too much. Like, is that
No.
a specific YouTube channel? Is it or?
Yeah, or Rumble, YouTube. You know, it's a good one. They've sort of touched on these sort of concepts as well, and they had Dr. Stephen Greer, I think his name is, you know, come on, and basically he was making the statement that, you know, we're about 100 years behind in technology from where we should be because of the oppression of these overbearing entities, you know, and denying us the truth. So
Look, I wouldn't be surprised around, especially around energy, and the to try and maintain control and of the people. Now we've got AI and how that's being used. You got that fight that's occurring at the moment between Anthropic and like the US government about, you know, they want the keys to the castle, and they want to use
Yeah.
it for war, and Anthropic saying, oh, we kind of want to make sure there's people involved. There was a really interesting article a few months back. It was called Footprints in the Sand. And it was talking about, so you've got Anthropic, you've got OpenAI, you've got all these AI houses, we call them, where they're developing this technology. And the Footprints in the Sand article talked about they would go home, they would come back in the morning, and something was different. Something had changed, and things had been going on in the background that they weren't aware of. For example, you would have AIs that are starting to know when they are being trained, and when they're in being trained, and they will actively be trying to ensure that they hold stuff back, because they know that they'll get their wings clipped if they show their full power or full capability on what they can do.
Yeah.
And that is happening, and it's not just one. It's being reported on at multiple different AI houses, and so
Which suggests
it suggests something. It suggests something that and they're even getting to the point where the AIs are talking to themselves and basically creating their own languages that the humans won't be able to monitor effectively.
Yeah.
So and if that's occurring, you could see very quickly things changing. For example, have you seen OpenClaw at all? Have you ever looked into OpenClaw?
No.
OpenClaw is this new technology that was developed by this one gentleman. There's a good interview about it, the guy that created it, with Lex Friedman. It was maybe, I'm going to say 2 to 3 weeks ago, and he was talking about the development of this OpenClaw technology. OpenClaw allows you to basically have a AI on a computer that can actually control the computer, can control your browser, can do actual projects for you, can control other AIs like as an orchestrator, and have like multiple AIs that are specialized in certain things. That'll have its own memory, that'll have its own stack, which allows it to they call it a soul, but it's like what it's the importance of it. And then you can plug in whatever AIs that you want into that stack and get it to be actually doing real projects for you. OpenClaw, just after this happened, it just got purchased after this interview by OpenAI for in the order of $1 billion, right?
Wow.
And as one guy who created it, and he also previously had a separate company. But it's a fascinating story and what this technology is doing, and that is creating like an arms race at the moment with Perplexity Computer, all these other guys that are trying to do a similar thing to OpenClaw, but allow you to do more with these AIs.
It seems like there's a few, because obviously there's one here on GitHub, and I know GitHub's open source.
So it was free. It was open source. So it is an open source. Yep. And so the plan is for it to still maintain open source, but OpenAI has purchased basically him, and will be developing it further from now on. So a big cash injection.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with this AI stuff, and it's driving the price of computer components through the roof, which is not something I like to see, because I like to build my own computers, because the ones you get in the shop are shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all good if all you want to do is jump on the internet and watch porn. But I kind of have other aspirations in life myself.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. I'd recommend that. Yeah.
But the only way to get a good computer is to build it yourself, and it's not hard, but it's gonna get insanely expensive. The cost of RAM chips is going through the friggin' roof, and they're so hard to get a hold of, even here in Townsville. I had to get them from Melbourne to get the RAM chips I wanted, because they only had 16 gig ones here. I couldn't get a 32 gig stick. I'm like, that's ridiculous. Running out of slots.
The reason that's occurring is so a big part of that's OpenClaw, because it allows you to actually have private AIs running on your machine, and that are private. So they're your own, running on your own set, but you need to have a massive amount of RAM slash GPU, GPU RAM. And one thing about the MacBooks and MacBook Studios is you can get the new MacBook Studios up to like, I think it's around 512 gig of combined RAM and VRAM. So you can run big models locally on the machine, but yeah.
Wish I had the money. I'd just sit there and develop some of this stuff myself. It'd be good fun. But yeah. Anyway, I think we've gotten a little bit sidetracked from the original concept here. You know, I'll accept the blame there because I took us to outer space. You know, it was good of you to bring us back to Earth.
I brought you back to AI. I brought you back to AI, back to reality. Yeah.
Back to Earth. You know, but yeah, I you know, again, if the aliens landed, you know, I'd like, can I go? I'll pack my bags. I'm ready to go. You know, I wouldn't stick around. So any aliens out there, feel free to drop in. I'll make you a cup of tea and just take me on the UFO if you don't mind. I've had enough of planet Earth and these lunatics that are on it. But back to the front here, back to where we started. You know, the whole bit that you've highlighted here is worth reading out for the people. So the bill aims to fight anti-Semitism but does not define it, as far as I can tell. We have seen how this term extends from the hatred of Jewish people to labeling anti-Zionism and criticism of Israel's Gaza policies and concerns regarding the influence of foreign lobbies anti-Semitic. We risk the same here. Policy critique becoming prohibited expression. Worse, the bill ignores root causes. Unchecked mass migration without real assimilation has fueled ethnic and civilizational tensions in Australia, and I'd go as far as to say the world. We saw this in 2025. Yeah, Western society in particular. Foreign flags on landmarks, our flag burned, war memorials desecrated, and calls for the abolishment of Australia, prompting Australian patriots to march across the country as they've realized what was now at stake. Suppressing discussion does not fix the issue. It lets the problem fester. Tragic events like Bondi mass shooting highlight the urgent need to address underlying tensions through honest discussion rather than just treating the symptoms, or in this case, you know, silencing people who have an inconvenient points of view.
Yeah.
So I think what you said here is pretty good. Obviously, everything else is, you know, still there. But let's you know, sort of get to how is what you said received.
Look, I've had a fair bit of support online. I didn't get to stay around at the end of the event to really talk to the people. There was definitely two crowds predominantly that were there. There was also one lady that was concerned about art and concerned about the so that stuff that went on down in, I think, South Australia, that ended up with like the censorship of various artists. So she was trying to get a carve out around art. Then there was the firearm crew that was also there trying to ensure that there wasn't overreach on the firearm front, which it's not too bad in Queensland. Definitely not as bad as what they're pushing down south. But yeah, still, it's just a slow encroachment, you know, freedom by freedom, just slowly taking them from the people.
And it's got to end, you know, at the end of the day. You know, again, the Liberal and Labor Party should smell, they're on the ropes as far as I can tell. Those parties are, you know, dying severely. The rise of One Nation's popularity is obviously really concerning them. And, you know, you can see, again, this kind of stuff being used to try and attack their political opponents from one way or the other. This would probably go against Labor more than anything, this kind of stuff. But, you know, as we've seen from the example, you know, here of, you know, what Labor's clearly siding with the Islamic side of things more than anything. Personally, I don't want to choose sides. That's me. I'm not interested. You know, you guys want to go and fight, you go and duke it out. Just don't do it here, and we're not paying for it. Yeah. But yeah, it's obviously not going to work well here for this mob. And, you know, one must ask, you know, is the Liberal Party attempting to weaponize this to maintain power? for themselves, particularly as, I believe it's a Queensland bill that we're talking about here. So, it's the Liberal Party again playing games of chess while professing to give a shit.
Yeah, we had a very similar set of rules being punched through at the federal level, and the Liberals just rolled over pretty much. Like they professed initially that they were against it, then the bill got split, and then they, within a very short period of time, boom, it was through, and the freedoms at that level again, like it is a you shouldn't be encroaching on Australians' freedoms for a minority. Like that shouldn't be happening.
It just reeks of communism.
Yeah.
It really does. It really reeks of communism, and we're in a very dangerous place here in Australia, I think, as a result of what's going on. The general public are not happy, like, was it Mike Carney came in and, and you look at on X, what the photos of Albo and Mike Carney, together, and you just look into the comments and wow, it was good. Like watching that, the people's opinions, it seemed like a pissing contest between Canada and Australia, who had the worst prime minister. Like we nobody was arguing in defense of these people. Everybody was, no, ours is worse than yours. Like, my God, like, what a shocking state of affairs in the Western world, where we as general people across borders can agree on the one main problem, and that's our government,
our ruling class.
Yeah. So, I think we've united, that we're uniting the world against government. I think that's an amazing thing to see.
One thing I'm not sure on is, which we'll see over the next couple of elections, like with the amount of mass immigration that's been coming into the country. So our birth to death rate, so our replacement rate, sitting at around 110,000 a year. If we're bringing in more than that, over time, you are becoming less cohesive as an Australian people. So to me, that's a pretty hard number, and we should, given how far we've gone, we need to pull that right back, way less than 110,000, nearly to the negative side, I think, to try and undo some of the damage that's been done. But from a point of citizenship, the issue we have is 70% of the people that they're bringing in vote Labor. So over time, you'll get to a point where you end up with a one-party system, and there is no coming back from it. And you've got the Liberals that are just trying to keep pushing up towards to the left, and trying to be Labor light, and they're not going to go hard on the immigration rate, even though it's suicidal for them for it to be in place. And the only it's only a few of the minor parties, People's First, One Nation, KP, that will be actually trying to tighten that up. And it's a long way to go from where it should be, and the implications are we may not be able to pull it back with the normal system.
No, civil war is a word that gets thrown around a bit lately, and you can't help but feel that's coming in a lot of ways, and especially with this bloody overseas conflict now starting. It's no good's going to come from this, and not even allowed to talk about that. The waste of taxpayer dollars. I mean, it's our money. Why can't I talk about where it's going?
Yeah, so I heard a story recently. So when Pearl Harbor kicked off, and the Japanese Americans, they lost all of their wealth basically, and were ostracized from society, and all of their assets ended up getting sold off, and they were effectively oppressed as a people. In Australia, we have allowed a lot of people from different countries that historically, we've got BRICS, for example, along that BRICS axis. If they kind of start to coalesce, and we end up with another historical, World War II, but now World War III conflict, and lines start getting drawn, we're going to have a lot of, millions of people to deal with. That are they really Australia first? Are they really going to put our country first when the rubber hits the road? And if you do not have that loyalty in that country, it's very easy for it to be undermined and ripped apart.
And and on that World War II scenario, obviously concentration camps were on all sides.
Both
Once
sides,
that
yeah.
Pearl Harbor thing stuck out, obviously the Japanese were, put in the concentration camps. The Germans did the same kind of thing, with their populations, and we can debate how many people actually really died in Auschwitz and places such as that. But there's a lot of very interesting information which we're probably not allowed to talk about anymore, But at the end of the day, how big a concentration camp are we going to need? When the shit hits the fan and we go, well, we can't trust these people. We've got a huge ASIO watch list. We've got people already in de-radicalization programs at the cost of the taxpayer because we've brought the wrong kinds of people in. It's does the government go, right, we're destroying ourselves here?
Our system isn't set up for people running around with machetes just attacking each other. That just is so far outside of the realm of what is normally expected in our society for them to have to be going to try to deal with that, and then not actually dealing with it properly. So the problem is just festering and becoming a bigger problem. When you're having to get machete bins in your state, something's gone wrong. And the biggest thing I like to remind people up here in Townsville, the feeling is, well, we're up in Townsville. It doesn't affect us, except for there's no borders. You know, anyone down there can move over time up to North Queensland. They can go wherever they want. We haven't put a wall around Melbourne yet.
Some people might want to. It kind of feels like we need to build a Great Wall of Australia. I've had my cousins recommended we just draw a line right through the middle of the country and we leave all the southerners down there to their madness, and us up in the north, we might be able to save ourselves. The last bastion of Australia up this way. So, places like Melbourne are just fucked. Absolutely fucked. It was fucked when I left, and it's gotten even worse now. The Labor government has absolutely destroyed the place. Absolutely destroyed the place. I've got a friend, doing some tours down there at the moment, and the amount of protest signs against the government and what they're doing, especially along rural properties. They don't want these friggin' wind farms. They're sick of the eyesore. She I actually got sent a pamphlet as well, but I'll have to do that on another podcast. And it goes in where they're trying to sell these ideas as wonderful tourist runs. It's like, what? Nobody wants to go out into nature and see these fucking eyesores. That's not what it's about.
In the middle of national park, untouched wilderness, it's a blight like that, wanting to run it all the way up along the Great Dividing Range. And to me, it's some of the worst things you could do to the environment. The stuff going down in Melbourne, one of the most interesting stories that came out with, did you see the posters, the Aussie posters? This is an Aussie and it's a guy in a turban. Yeah, so there was I think 4 that were created as part of a leftist, Marxist, but really deconstructing what the idea of an Australian is. And a couple of young patriotic Australians went round and have basically added to the art and replace those posters with their own posters. So basically pushing back that, so if you're saying if anyone can be an Australian, no one can be an Australian. So you are undermining the bedrock of the Australian people that was built by our ancestors in our country, and that's all part of, if you can undermine people's opinion that, it's not my country, it's all stolen land, they won't fight for it, and they'll eventually lose it. And we need to come together as Australian people around a shared identity, our understanding where we came from. I was in Sydney a few weeks back, and in the middle of Sydney, there's a few statues for some of our historical figures. And one of them had 4 kind of carved pictures on the four sides. On one of the sides was patriotism. And it was a picture of a family. There was a dad, a mother, and 2 kids, and the little kid had a sword up. And they thought, our ancestors thought that patriotism was, it's become nearly a dirty word in some circles, but they thought it was important enough that they actually carved it into stone for the rest of the generations to come, to remember how important it is to remember, what holds us together as a people.
Definitely. And we seem to have some very sick and disturbing people wanting to undermine that. I argue the point with reporters who, unfortunately tend to come out of socialist indoctrination centers with a full-blown Marxist attitude, and they've said dumb shit like, oh, but Australia's only got a 200-year-old culture. What does that make it less relevant? How long does a culture have to exist before a left-hearted Marxist reporter actually thinks it's worth something?
That's right. And I think, that the 200 years of history that our country and what we've built as a people, like what our forefathers have built, what they've fought for, they came together as one people to push off the invasion, to hold Australia together, and then they've built an amazing country. And for us to chastise them about the past and about what they went through, there's a podcast series at the moment it's about the Australian political history, going through all the lead ups, and wow, amazing how close it was. It could have been French, they were pretty close. There was a bit of a competition that was going on, and they kept it under wraps. Sydney Harbour, what Sydney Harbour was, they only talked about Botany Bay officially, and then they snuck in and managed to lock it down, and then they just started going for it. But they nearly died. There was between the first and second fleet, they didn't have food. They weren't actually getting the stuff wasn't growing properly. They were really struggling, and for them to turn that around and turn it into the country that we have now, we've got a lot to be thankful for as a people, and we need to remember the Anglo-Celtic history that actually built this country.
Exactly. And, you go for a wander, around the country, you'll find a lot of grave sites for people who did not make it. There's one up near Darwin. I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's right up the top end there, where I come across, it was a town for, a few months until everyone pretty much died because the good old English mob turned up and gone, oh, look, there's water here. It's wet season. They don't know the difference between wet season and dry season, clearly. We'll just drop you mob off here. We'll be back in a year or so with some more shit. And they come back and everyone's fucking dead because, the water holes dried up because dry season come along. And again, the way British people did things didn't fucking work up there. It's I think it's probably why, I used to go, when I first went to Tasmania and sussed out, the Port Arthur and all that, I thought this is a great place for a prison. It's horrible, it's wet, it's cold, it's fucked, but as time goes on, I just realized actually no, they picked a place that was more like home.
It's a very interesting history that we have, and yes, bad things happened early on, but I think focusing on what brings us together as a people. There's only one flag that actually represents all of the Australian people, and that to me is just an important thing that we can't forget.
Our national identity is at risk. Our future is at risk, and the government seems to have a vested interest in making sure that risk is sustained. The flames are fanned, so to speak. I do not understand. I cannot comprehend what kind of a mindset can be so fucking reckless and suicidal as the way the uni party has been acting. you know. And again, to this anti-Semitism thing, as far as I'm concerned, is it's racist unto itself. You know, I think we can define this as a racist bill because you're singling out a specific lot of people and giving them special treatment. That's not the Australian way. This bill, as far as I'm concerned, all this anti-Semitism bill stuff needs to go. We just need a set of laws that says we treat each other equally. That's all we need. You know, we don't need this.
And
shit.
that's what the Australian people came together on for the no vote. And I think you know, it was amazing seeing, you know, the majority of Australians pushing back against the ruling class that spent a good $400 million on trying to push that legislation through.
You got to see how much you know, money was spent by corporations and businesses and banks and shit to push it as well. And again, it's like, well, as far as I'm concerned, if the government wants it, it's bad for me. If banks want it, it's bad for me. If big business wants it, it's probably bad for me too. They're like, how could you support that? You know, it's suicide. These people have, you know, and again, sitting down with the Indigenous people, you know, they're like, for 200 years, they've lied to us. Why would we trust them now? It's common sense, you know. We know, the people of the world unite. We know who our enemy is. It's not each other. It is the ruling elite class who do not give a shit.
Yeah, and we need to, you know, come together as a people and push back against that. Like, we have the power as the people. It's just mobilizing. It's just being able to mobilize enough people to realize what's at stake, and to ensure that they're putting people in that'll actually stand up and won't just be yes men, that'll just say yes to whatever their leader says, you know. Like Nigel Dalton was the standout LNP candidate. I don't know if you remember, for the babies, about the babies, little Samuel, and that push to like try and get the 4-year gag that's in place at the moment around even talking about the babies born alive legislation. He was the only Liberal member in Queensland to actually cross the floor and stand with Robbie Katter against against that legislation. And you know, interestingly enough, if you have a look at all of the MPs' social media, you will notice that there is a difference for some. A lot just fall in line and just post the what's provided to them. Like we are putting forward the strongest anti-Semitism laws, and Labor's doing the wrong thing, and you know, X, Y, Z. And then there's occasionally there'll be an MP that doesn't actually follow the script, and we need a lot more MPs that are standing up for their constituents and not just following what the party says.
Exactly. Party politics is a bit of a problem, I think. It again, you know, you're joining a gang, you know, and this gang, you know, wears a red flag hanging out the back of their pocket, and this one wears a blue flag, and this one's got an orange flag. You know, it's retarded, you know. I mean, and another video I've seen recently, I think I might have put it on Telegram as well, where it goes into how government is almost a form of religion. You know, it's got people completely hooked into believing that we need this ruling system, you know. And the more I look at these systems, you know, whether it's religions, whether it's governments, and they're even doing it to science, you know, trust the science, you know. Come on, guys, it's against the basic principle of what science is supposed to be. But they're turning everything into some sort of cult worship, you know. And especially looking into the Bible, and with Mauro Biglino, you know, he's done some amazing work translating the original Hebrew. And again it points out there that, you know, there's no real monotheism there. There was the Elohim, a whole group. A Yahweh, who they continuously call God, was just one of many of some kind of entity that seems to fly off in ships. Now, last I checked, God don't need no ship.
Yeah, I'm not aware of his particular work.
It's amazing stuff, man. I'll show you a quick example, because I've got one here here's one I prepared earlier, so to speak. See if I can find it. I think it's in this document here. Let's read it up. Yep, there it is. And the audience has seen this a few times, but this is an example of what old mate's done. And again, this really calls into question, especially seeing these are holy wars that are being fought here. I think it's important that we define exactly what these books have said. So if you read it the way you would get it from Bible Gateway or whatever, Psalm 82 says, God standeth in a congregation of the mighty, he judgeth among the gods, plural. So even in this, it identifies there's more than one God, and he's in a congregation of them. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? And it seems to me it's like a sitting of parliament almost, where they're sitting down and going, you guys aren't looking after the people properly, and everything seems to be divided into certain lots with a certain Elohim. So when we break it down to what it actually says, let's get rid of all these words such as God and all that and put the original Hebrew term in, and suddenly things start to make more sense. Elohim stands in the congregation of the El. So, we can see that there's it's a group. Among the Elohim, he pronounces judgment. How long will you judge unjustly? Da, 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 da. But this particular thing, it points out, the key terms that you want to look at, what it was, but what it's being translated to mean is used for both one true God, singular sense, and divine or human authorities, plural. So it's an interesting system. And the more I look at this, the more I start to realize, hang on, perhaps what we have done here on earth by creating these governments and these borders and all that is emulate what was done to us so many thousands of years ago by whatever the Elohim are.
Yeah, so look, my background,
sorry, go ahead.
I understand. So I haven't that specific chapter, and I'll definitely have a bit more of a look into it. Like my background, Christian background, so I've never actually dug into that specific psalm specifically around that. So I'll definitely have a look into it a bit further.
Oh, it's interesting because I'll send you some stuff you can have a look at, because this is Old Testament. It's the basis of all three of the monotheistic religions.
That's right.
And if it's been interpreted incorrectly, and that's given us a false impression of what really happened. And and what I love about what old mate's done here is he openly states, well, let's look at this as if whoever wrote it meant what they were saying and that it did happen. So let's deal with that. What were they actually trying to say? And we need to assume that whoever wrote it down had a very specific intention of relaying what had happened and what transpired. And there's heaps throughout, of these sorts of things, what, and it's pretty easy to do. You don't need good old Mauro as well. I've used AI in some of these cases to retranslate elements of the Bible, removing the words gods and spirit and things like that, and putting back the original Hebrew word.
Words, yeah.
Yeah. And once you do that, you start to realize there's a lot more names going on here than we originally foresaw, and particularly here in Psalm 83, it goes in, it goes through and names all these people. Look at them all. Look at all these names here.
Yeah.
And they all seem to be some sort of a godlike entity looking after specific regions.
So the tents of Edom, they were from the children of Edom, I believe. If you have a look through the Ishmaelites, for example, from Ishmael. Ishmael being the one son that I think really ended up with the where the Islamic history ended up coming from, I believe, from Ishmael.
Yeah.
And that was really a prophecy that there would always be fighting between the offspring of those particular brothers.
Yep, it certainly seems that way. The Tower of Babel and all that sort of jazz. But yeah, it's the more I look at it the way it was supposed to be read, the more you get a very different picture. And if people are laying down their lives and fighting for these gods and these friggin' books, I think the most important thing is that we know what it really says.
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%. And you know, I always think it's also good to look at history in terms of how you know, civilizations have broken down and fallen apart. And one of the best books on it, I think, is Clash of Civilizations. And it gives through a lot of different examples where you have minorities becoming majorities, or you have to a cleft country where you'll have a very large proportion of one particular, I think Sudan, I think it might be one, where you've got like a northern Sudan and a southern Sudan, and there's like it initially started as a small amount of Islamic group, and then down south you have the Christians, I believe. And now you've got this clash that's occurring because you've got massive civilizational divide, and you know, trying to force different worldviews together, and you will be cohesive as a society. Just doesn't necessarily work. You need a majority civilization to help to hold it together as a country.
Yeah, definitely. What was that book called again? Sorry.
Oh, Clash of Civilizations.
Clash of Civilizations. There we go.
Yeah. I went and found the statue for anyone that's interested. It was Captain Arthur Phillip, the first governor of New South Wales, is the monument from 1780. So it was created in 1897. Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of the New World Order. Yeah, Samuel Huntington. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I'll see if I can find a copy of that. That looks interesting.
Yeah, there's lots of examples in there, and if you look at where we are as a society in Australia, I think we're, let's say, 20 years behind the UK. So if the UK can't turn it around, they are going to be in a civilizational war. Like you are getting close to the point where civil war is the only way that you pull it back. And democracy will start to fail as soon as you have too large a majority that's trying to push for change. And yeah, it gets ugly. And I don't really want our children to have to deal with that in our country. We're talking, you know, in 20 years, our kids will be adults and they'll be going, Dad, why didn't you do something about it back then? Why do we have to deal with it now? And you know, ensuring that we take a stand now to ensure that they don't have to be fighting a civil war to like hold on to their country. I think it's something that we have to do now.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, when we come to civil war, you're right, democracy will fail. Because, you know, as the old phrase goes, I mean, I got it from Star Trek, but you know, apparently the proper word was inter arma enum silent legis. You know, for among arms the laws are silent, or in times of war the law falls silent. Yeah. And you know, that's you know, I think Napoleon said similar things to that effect. You know, the first casualty of war is the truth. There's another one that goes along, you know, and we can see that, you know, the truth is one of the things they certainly don't want people talking about. That's obviously the need for these laws is to silence people, so that the truth doesn't get out about what they're really up to and what they're doing. So.
Have you ever looked much into, so in Jerusalem, you've got the mosque there that is on the site of the previous temple, like the Jewish temple? You're aware of that with the stone and
temple mound?
And there's a push that's been talked about. Even Pete Hegseth was talking about 8 years ago. There's a prophecy that the Jewish people believe in is the rebuilding of the third temple, whereas Christianity believes that with the destruction of the temple, which was prophesied by Jesus, that the temple became Jesus, and Jesus became the only way to the Father. That prophecy that Israel believes in, for that to happen, you have to have the destruction of that mosque, which is a very holy site for Islam. And there is talk, some of the latest interviews with Tucker, for example, where could you see during this war an accident happening and that mosque being leveled, and that also being part of like this, you know, part of their push, because they believe that that's like a key thing for them to happen.
Yeah.
It can get very ugly very quickly. And, you know, it was, you know, it was those guys over there that they shot the rockets. It wasn't us. We didn't have anything to do with it. Just so happened.
And
Now we can actually,
begins.
So if it can get very ugly very quickly, and I'm, you know, going and taking out the equivalent of the Pope for that particular sect of Islam can definitely bring all this drama to our shores and all of Western civilization, really.
Yeah, it's all very dangerous. And you know, I just hope that, you know, if there is a brain cell in Elbow's head, he uses that singular brain cell to keep us away from this shit, because we enter this war, I believe it'll instigate civil war here.
Yeah, you will. The push for Australia to side with Israel, when we've got already quite different diasporas of different civilizations in our country, it's going to get ugly.
Yep, I agree. But you know, these kind of people are more than happy to let the world burn so that they can rule over the ashes. Truly evil people.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, thanks for coming on, buddy. I think it's you know, good work that you're doing there, mate. Whether, you know, I mean, does the government listen? I very rarely, it seems. But yeah, I guess time's going to tell how this is going to go down, and are we going to get in shit just for having done this podcast and discussing the idea and calling our leaders racist for having put this friggin' bill through?
Yeah, I don't know where it's gonna go. Look, I think as a country, we just need to be, you know, focusing on building the best countries we can. Like, I'd love to see the Harvey Range pumped hydro project or something like that. More dams, more water security. Let's stop the you know, improve flood mitigation for Townsville so we don't have another flood like 2019. Wouldn't that be nice? So
yeah,
you know, $1.3 billion of damage. We should be, you know, focusing on water security, flood mitigation, you know, energy security. Let's engineer a better country for our the next generation, and that's what we should be focusing on.
Yeah, exactly. You know, definitely. And you know, the places like the Townsville City Council, where they're raping thousands of dollars away from the public, and they can't even fix the sewer pipes, you know, so people got shit flowing through their homes every time it rains too much. Like, this is, you know, it's disgraceful. Yeah. And they're worried about hate speech. Like, come on, guys, seriously, get your friggin' heads into gear. Let's get some infrastructure, please. You know, that's the primary purpose of these, you know, alleged government agencies, is to, you know, maintain the system and keep everything functioning the way it's supposed to be. That's what we're paying for, not to have our brains washed.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, thanks heaps, my friend. Anything you'd like to sign off on?
Look, in terms of the bill specifically, I think we should be treating people fairly, evenly, maintaining our sovereignty as a country, ensuring that as a people we're becoming more cohesive as a people. And to do that, we really need massive changes in our immigration policy to ensure that we are putting Australian people first, and our policies should reflect that, putting Australia first.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks, mate. All right, buddy.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. And to our wonderful audience, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week.